You're listening to Psych to Parent, where we turn brain science into tiny wins at home. I'm Dr. Amy, your not-so-typical school psychologist, mom of two, and endurance athlete. I love a good data set and a diagnostic manual. But I also forget permission slips, overthink IEP emails, and occasionally replay the moment I snapped at my kids in the car. In other words, I'm in the messy middle with you, not above it. This show is for parents of big feeling, big thinking kids who are tired of vague advice and Pinterest perfect behavior charts. Each episode, I'll pull back the curtain on what I see in real evaluations, school meetings, my private practice, and my own kitchen, and translate the research into simple scripts, tiny routines, and nervous system friendly tweaks you can actually use. Think of it as a nervous system rehab meets mindset coaching meets a smart, slightly spicy, non-judgy friend in your earbuds. We'll take one real life challenge at a time and shrink it down into 1 or 2 tiny wins you can start this week. No perfection, no 47-step sticker systems, just small, repeatable shifts that add up over time. Quick legal-ish note in plain English. This podcast is for education and support. It's not therapy, it does not create a clinical relationship, and it's not a substitute for personalized medical or mental health advice. If you're worried about your child's safety or mental health, or your own, please reach out to a trusted professional. Okay, deep breath, drop your shoulders. You're not behind and you're not alone. Let's get psyched to parent. Picture this. The worksheet is on the table. The pencil is right there. The folder is open. Your child did this exact kind of math problem yesterday. Maybe they did it at school today. Maybe the teacher sent home the paper with a little "great job" sticker and note at the top. Maybe you have actual written evidence that this child knows how to do this. So you take a breath and say, in your most reasonable, regulated, "I've listened to a parenting podcast" voice. "Okay, let's get started." And your kid says, "I can't." Not, "Can you help me with number 3?" Not, "I forgot what regrouping means." Just, "I can't." And something inside your parent brain starts to simmer because you're like, this worksheet is not new. The pencil is not hiding. The directions are not written in some sort of ancient code. And you're trying very hard not to say, "You absolutely can, you just don't want to." And then the pencil drops. The chair gets pushed back and your child says, "This is stupid." Maybe they say, "I don't care." Or maybe they say, "I'm not doing this." Maybe they slide halfway under the table like homework has become a hostage negotiation and they're not accepting your terms. And now the worksheet is not just a worksheet. It's a full family systems event. So in this episode, we are talking about that moment when your child looks capable from the outside, but the task still falls apart at home. The moment when "I can't" sounds a whole lot like "I won't." The moment when your brain wants to call it lazy, careless, dramatic, or defiant. I want to offer an alternative interpretation. Maybe your kid is depleted, embarrassed, and stuck at the starting line. And that's where I want us to start today, not with the worksheet itself, but with what that worksheet is asking your kid's brain and body to do after a full day of holding it together. Welcome back to Psych to Parent. I'm Dr. Amy, school psychologist and parent coach. And this is where we take those very real parenting moments, the ones that happen at the kitchen table, in the car line, during homework, at bedtime, and in that tiny school chair, and we translate them through a school psychology lens. This is the second episode in our July Back to School Runway series, Fine at Home, Melting at School. In the last episode, we talked about why we don't want to interview the meltdown. We talked about the child who holds it together all day and then gets in the car, drops the backpack, and rejects the snack, and turns the question, "How was your day?" into this emotional jump scare. In this episode, we're moving into the next piece. What happens when your child looks capable at school, but at home, that same kind of task turns into a meltdown? What happens when the teacher says, "They can do it here," and you're thinking, "Amazing, truly, I love that." But at my kitchen table, this same kid is acting like the pencil personally betrayed them. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why this "they know how to do this" does not always mean they can access the skill independently, consistently, under stress, or after a full school day. We'll talk about executive functioning in plain language. We'll talk about why shame makes starting harder. We'll talk about what to say when your child says, "I can't," or "I don't care." And we'll talk about how to make the first step smaller without dropping the expectation, because that is the middle lane. Not shame, not rescue, not a 2-hour math worksheet courtroom drama. God bless, that sounds terrible. The goal is support the skill, keep the expectation. But before we get practical, we have to name why this moment makes parents so wildly frustrated. All right, friends, let's talk about the messy middle. And let's be honest. This is one of those parenting moments that can make a very kind, very educated, very emotionally aware adult feel a little feral, like a raccoon in a vending machine. Because you have tried things. You have tried reminders, rewards, consequences. You've tried the sticker chart. You've tried the cute chart. You've tried the less cute chart. You maybe have tried sitting next to them. You've tried not sitting next to them because maybe you are too rescue-y, too much. You've tried saying, this is your responsibility. You have tried saying, I'll help you. You've tried making a homework station with pencils and sticky notes and the good eraser. I mean, there should be a picture on Pinterest, right? You've tried being calm, firm, breathing deeply, and then you've tried breathing less deeply while whispering to yourself, why is this quiet?" into the pantry as you eat a Girl Scout cookie if you're like me. And the hardest part is that your child often can do the thing. They can do the math at school. They can read the directions when the teacher asks. They can pack up at the end of the day. They can hold it together in front of other adults. So when they come home and melt down over the same kind of task, your brain's probably like, but they know how to do this. They can do it at school. Why are they acting like they've never seen a pencil before? And honestly, friends, that thought makes sense because from the outside, it can look like a choice. It can look like a refusal or laziness or carelessness or I don't care kind of vibes. But here's the messy middle. Can do it sometimes is not the same as can do it independently, consistently, under stress, after a full school day. That sentence matters. School may be showing us what your child can do in one setting with that structure, at that time of day, with those cues, and with that level of social pressure. Home may be showing us what they can access after their tank is empty. Two things can be true. Your child may genuinely be able to do the work at school, and your child may genuinely be too depleted to access the same skill at home without support. Both are data. And when both are true, the question changes. So instead of asking, why won't they just do it? We start asking, what skill is this task asking for? And where is it breaking down? So let's put a brain-based frame around what might be happening underneath the eye roll, the pencil drop, and the I can't kind of vibes. Let's talk about executive functioning. Executive functioning is basically the part of the brain that helps us manage the tiny circus of getting things done. Starting, stopping, remembering, organizing, shifting from one thing to another, holding directions in mind, planning steps, managing time, checking work, tolerating mistakes, staying with something boring or hard. And here's the part that matters for homework. Homework, it's not one skill. Homework is a pile of invisible skills wearing a worksheet costume. So to you, it might just look like one worksheet, but for your kid's brain, it may be a 17-step group project with a side of shame. They have to transition away from whatever they were doing before. Maybe they have to find a folder, remember the assignment, read the instructions, and figure out where to start. And probably tolerate the fact that they don't want to do this, hold the steps in mind, ignore the sibling making those funny mouth noises, and make a mistake and not collapse into, I'm stupid. Keep going. Check the work, put it back in the folder. Remember to turn it in tomorrow at school. Friends, that is not one thing. That is a lot of things. And with kids, school-age kids, self-regulation is developmental. It's not a personality trait your child has or doesn't have. It grows over time through practice, support, structure, and repeated moments where an adult helps the child borrow enough regulation to take the next step. That is called co-regulation. And co-regulation is not coddling. It doesn't mean you do the homework for your kid. It means you help their system get organized enough to try the next step. Because when the demand goes up and the tank goes down, kids often have a harder time accessing skills they technically have. The skill may be in there, but the key might be buried under school day exhaustion, hunger, disappointment, sensory overload, and the sound of their sibling chewing. So when your child says, I can't, They may not mean I have no idea how to multiply. Instead, they may mean I can't start. I can't tolerate feeling bad at this. I can't organize the steps. I can't access this after holding it together all day. I can't do this with the amount of capacity I've left. Now, this doesn't mean that homework disappears, but it does mean we stop treating the stuck moment like a character problem. Once we see homework as more than one worksheet, the homeschool mismatch starts to make a lot more sense. This is the part that makes parents want to bang their head gently, lovingly, but repeatedly on the kitchen counter because you hear from school, they can do it at school. And maybe they can, that matters. That is useful information, but it's not the whole picture. At school, your child may have a lot of invisible support. A teacher starts the task for the whole class. The directions are on the board. Everyone is getting out the same paper. There is peer momentum. There's a classroom routine. There are adult prompts. There is a clear beginning and ending. There may be visual supports. There is social pressure to look okay. There's the energy of an earlier part of the day. There's the whole structure wrapped around the skill. And at home, it may look very different. At home, there may be less structure. Maybe there's more fatigue, hunger, sibling noise, emotional safety to fall apart. There's less social pressure to perform. A parent who is both the safe person and the demand person, and a full day of effort sitting in your child's nervous system. For kids who mask at school, this matters even more. Some kids spend the school day working very hard to look fine. They're watching what everyone else is doing. They're trying so hard not to get corrected. They're holding in tears. They're pretending they understand. They're sitting still when their body wants to move. They're smiling when they feel overwhelmed. They're using every ounce of be okay energy they have. Then they get home and the homework folder comes out and the task may look similar, but the child is not in the same state of mind. So here's the line I want you to hold on to. School performance tells us what is possible in that setting. Home behavior may show what is sustainable after the school day load. Now, this doesn't mean that school is wrong. This does not mean the teacher is missing everything. It doesn't mean that your kid should never have homework, routines, or responsibilities. It means we have to get more precise as parents and caregivers. When a teacher says they can do it here, that's useful data. When you say they fall apart at home, that is also useful data. The goal isn't to decide which adult is telling the truth. The goal is to understand the condition under which your child can access the skill. So now that we've separated school performance from after school capacity, let's look at the phrase that gets parents stuck. They know how to do this. Gosh, when I hear that phrase, they know how to do this, it shows up everywhere. Parents say it, teachers say it, kids even say it themselves. And sometimes it is technically true. Your child may know the math fact. They may know how to write the sentence. They may know where the folder goes. They may know the morning routine. They may know the chore expectation. But knowing the skill is not the same as managing all the steps around using the skill. A child may know how to do a math problem and still struggle to start a worksheet. A child may know how to read directions and still struggle to hold 3 steps in mind. A child may know where the backpack belongs and still struggle to transition into the house, manage hunger, handle sibling noise, and remember the backpack routine without a cue. A child may know bedtime routine and still struggle to shift from play to pajamas when their brain is tired and their body is out of gas. So instead of asking, do they know how to do this? Try adding this. Can they access this skill right now in this setting with this level of support after this kind of day? That question changes everything because now we're not arguing about whether they are smart enough, responsible enough, motivated enough, or trying hard enough. We're asking a more useful question. Where is the break point? Does this task break at starting, remembering, organizing, shifting, checking, recovering from a mistake, asking for help? This is where the support goes. Not everywhere, not forever, just at the break point. And this is important because rewards, charts, and consequences often target the finished behavior. Turn in your homework, finish the worksheet, keep your backpack organized, do the chore. And sometimes these tools can help, but rewards can motivate a skill that exists. They do not automatically teach a skill that is missing. Now, friends, I love a chart. I love a good behavioral tool. But here's something I think is important. Rewards can motivate a skill that exists. They do not automatically teach a skill that is missing. A sticker chart can celebrate a child remembering the folder. It doesn't automatically teach the steps for how to organize the folder, when to check the folder, what to do with loose papers, and how to remember it again. This is not me coming for your sticker chart if you use one at home. If the chart helps, beautiful, amazing. We love a useful chart. But if the child is missing the skill, the chart cannot do all the teaching. The expectation stays, the support changes. And then when a kid knows how but still can't start, we have to talk about the quiet thing that often makes the stuck moment even stickier: shame. For a lot of kids, especially kids who hold it together at school, homework is not just hard because it's boring or repetitive. Homework can be hard because it pokes at shame. The child might be thinking, I should know this. My teacher thinks I can do this. My parents think I can do this. Everyone thinks I'm smart. What if I start and I get it wrong? What if I need help and that means something bad about me? What if I prove I'm not as capable as everyone thinks I am? And here's the thing, kids don't usually say that out loud. They don't sit at the kitchen table and say, Mother, I'm experiencing a shame response. This task is threatening my identity as a capable child. That'd be wonderful if they did that. But instead, they do things like this. They say, I'm stupid. I don't care. You can't make me. I'm not doing this. Maybe they make jokes. They rush. Maybe they rip the paper. Maybe they sharpen their pencil 12 times. Maybe they wet noodle and go boneless in the chair. Maybe they suddenly need water, a snack, different socks, a new pencil, and possibly a lawyer. Now, from the outside, that can look like they're not caring. But sometimes I don't care means I care so much, I can't tolerate feeling bad at this. This is where we have to be careful. Because if we respond to shame with more shame, the starting line moves further and further away. Shame does not build executive function. Shame does not make the starting line closer. It usually moves the starting line across the street, behind a locked gate, guarded by a raccoon. So when we say, you're being lazy, you know this, stop being dramatic, why can't you just try? You're wasting my time. We as adults may be accidentally increasing the threat level. And when the threat level goes up, access to the skill often goes down. That doesn't mean you need to be perfect. That doesn't mean that one frustrated sentence ruins everything. It means when we can, we want to lower shame before we solve the task. Not because we are removing the expectation, because we are trying to help the child re-enter the expectation. The expectation stays, the starting line gets smaller. So let's take this out of theory and here's your school's like in your back pocket moment. Now, when I'm thinking about a kid who is refusing to do homework, losing papers, rushing, forgetting, melting down, or saying things like, I can't, I'm trying to separate the final behavior from the underlying skill. The final behavior might be refusal, arguing, shutting down, rushing. Maybe it's making careless mistakes or forgetting assignments, losing papers. Maybe it's things like they say, I don't care, I can't. But underneath, here's what I want to know. What skill is this task asking for? Is it asking for task initiation? Is it working memory, organization, planning, flexible thinking, frustration tolerance, help seeking, transitioning, emotional regulation? And because we're not trying to turn you into a school psychologist at 5:30 with a cold cup of coffee in your hand, here's the simpler version. Where does this task break? Does it break before they start, at the first mistake, when we read the instructions, when they realize there's multiple steps, when you walk away, when the task feels boring, when they have to remember to turn it in tomorrow? Once you know where it breaks, you can support that part. You don't have to support every single thing forever. You support the wobble. So for 1 week, pick one recurring struggle. Maybe it's the homework, backpack, a morning routine, chores, bedtime, just one. And you notice, where does it fall apart first? What happens right before? What helps even a little bit? This is not overanalyzing. This is pattern finding. And in the next episode, next week, we're going to take the exact idea and talk about how to bring the pattern, not the novel, to a teacher, a pediatrician, a therapist, or a school team. But for today, just remember this. Before you call it defiance, ask what skill the task is asking for. And this brings us into a phrase that many parents hear from school. Let's translate the school piece. The phrase is this, but they can do it at school. First, I want to say this gently. That may be true, and it matters. It tells us that your child has access to the skill in at least one setting. They may be able to do the math in class. They may be able to follow the writing routine. They may be able to keep it together for the teacher. They may be able to participate, comply, perform, or produce work during the school day. This is great information, but it's not the whole picture because doing something at school may happen when classroom structure, teacher cues, peer momentum, a predictable routine, and the energy your kid has early in the day. Doing something at home after school may happen with an empty tank, less structure, more emotional safety, hunger, sibling noise, and the crash that comes after holding it together. So when you hear, but they can do it at school, you can translate it as they have access to the skill in that setting. Now we need to understand what happens when the settings, support, timing, and capacity change. And you might say something like this to the teacher if you're talking to the teacher about this mismatch. I'm really glad to know that my kid can do it in class. At home, we're seeing a big drop off after school. I'm wondering if the issue is less about knowing the material and more about initiation, stamina, or the amount of support they need after a full day. That's collaborative. It's not blaming or dramatic. It says, I believe you, teacher, and I need you to believe what we're seeing at home too, because both are data. Now let's walk through what this actually looks like in family life because it really looks like a neat executive functioning checklist. Let's make this real. Let's talk about homework. So your child comes home with a worksheet and they did the same skill in class. And you say, just do the first one. They say to you, I can't. You see a child who knows how to do this and is refusing. The skill lens says, maybe this is task initiation. Maybe this is depletion or perfectionism. Is it shame? Is it transition fatigue? So support might sound like this. I'm not asking for the whole worksheet yet. Let's open the folder, write your name, and circle number 1. This is a smaller starting line. Let's talk about the backpack. There's a folder system. It's labeled, it's color-coded. It has such promise in September at the start of the school year. And somehow every paper is still loose, crumpled, like crunchy at the bottom of the backpack. I love that. And lightly marinated in that snack dust, especially if your kids like to eat cheddar blast, goldfish. You see they don't care, but a skills lens says this. Is this organization? Is this routine memory? Are there too many steps? Maybe the backpack clean out happens at the worst possible time of the day. So support might sound like after snack, we're doing a 2-minute backpack reset. Papers out, trash out, folder back in, and that's it. Not some sort of 45-minute archaeological dig. A 2-minute reset. Let's talk about the morning routine. Your child has been getting dressed for years. Years, friends. And somehow every morning they are missing socks, shoes, water bottle, backpack, and the one library book that apparently entered the witness protection program. And you see, how do they not know this by now? The skills lens says this. Maybe this is sequencing, working memory. Maybe it's time awareness. Maybe the routine has too many invisible steps. Support might sound like this. Here's the launch list. Shoes, water bottle, backpack. We're not saying get ready. That phrase is too big for some kids. And notice the pattern in all 3 of these examples. We're not dropping the expectation. We're shrinking the entry point. Underneath all of these moments, your child's behavior may be saying something more vulnerable than the words coming out of their mouth. Here's the big feeling kid reframe. When a kid says, I can't, the behavior might be saying, I'm depleted. When your kid says, I don't care, the behavior might be saying, I care so much that feeling bad at this is unbearable. When your kid says, this is stupid, the behavior might be saying, I feel stupid and I don't want to say that out loud. When your kid refuses to start, the behavior might be saying, I don't know how to cross the starting line. When your kid rushes and makes careless mistakes, the behavior might be saying, I'm trying to get away from this feeling as fast as possible. When your kid argues about every tiny part of the task, the behavior might be saying, I need control because I feel out of control. This doesn't mean every behavior is okay. It doesn't mean we let kids be hurtful. It doesn't mean homework or routines or responsibilities disappear. It means we stop using character labels for capacity problems. Not lazy, not careless, not doesn't care. Maybe it's stuck or depleted or embarrassed or missing a skill. Or maybe they need us to lower the shame and shrink the starting line. The child who says, I don't care, may be protecting themselves from the feeling of, I can't handle feeling this bad. And once we understand that, we can respond with both compassion and structure. So now let's give you some language you can actually use at the kitchen table. Here are a few parenting scripts you can borrow from me. Script number 1, place, you know how to do this. Instead of saying, you know how to do this, try, I believe this feels hard right now. Let's find the first tiny part. That script matters because it does not argue with the feeling. It also doesn't remove the expectation. Script number 2, you worked hard all day. Your brain may be tired. The homework still needs to start. So we're going to make the start smaller. This says, I see the load and we're still moving. Script number 3, sometimes I don't care shows up when something feels hard or embarrassing. I'm not going to argue with that sentence. I'm going to help you find the first step. This one is helpful because arguing with I don't care usually turns into some sort of like courtroom drama and nobody wins. Script number 4, keep the expectation. We're not skipping this because it feels hard. We are changing the size of the first step. This is the middle lane. It's not permissive, not shamey. We're supportive and clear. Script number 5, add a boundary. I can help with starting. I'm not available for yelling. We can take 2 minutes and try again. Support does not mean you become available for like verbal target practice. No thanks. That sucks. Script number 6, use the after school reset language. So you might say something like, first, let's have a snack and a reset, then we'll tackle the next thing. Or you might say, let's take a pause, snack, water, and a few quiet minutes. Or you might say, I can see this day was a lot for you. You don't have to carry it home. These are short on purpose because when kids are overloaded, long explanations can become another demand. Keep your voice low, keep your words few, keep the expectations reasonable. Let's turn those scripts into tiny action because tiny action is what changes on a random Tuesday night. All right, so let's make this doable and talk tiny wins. Tiny win number 1, reduce shame first. Before problem solving, try one sentence that lowers the threat level. This looks hard right now, not because you're lazy, but because your brain is tired. The point is not to rescue them from discomfort. The point is to reduce the shame enough that they can recenter the task. Tiny win number 2, use the replacement script. This week, try replacing, you know how to do this with, I believe this feels hard right now. Let's find the first tiny part to start. That's the whole practice. One sentence, one tiny rep. Tiny win number 3, make the first step smaller. Instead of do your homework, try, open your folder, write your name, read the first direction. Circle number 1, do one with me, then one on your own. Smaller is not weaker. Smaller is how stuck brains get started. Tiny win number 4, use the after school reset order. This comes straight from my after school reset guide. Follow the order, not perfection. You can download it. It's linked in the show notes. Here's the thing. Homework does not have to be the first thing your kid's nervous system meets when they walk through the door. Tiny win number 5, add one micro boundary. Try, I can help with starting. I'm not available for yelling. Or we'll work for 15 minutes, then pause and write down what got hard. Or you might say, I'm going to sit here for the first 2 minutes. Then I'm going to make dinner and you'll try the next one. Support works better when it has edges. And remember, pick one is enough. Before you go, a few favors for my friends. First, leave a review for the podcast. It helps other parents of big feeling, big brain, school age kiddos find this show when they're searching at 11 o'clock for why homework has become their villain origin story. Second, send this episode to a friend whose child says, I can't before the worksheet even starts. Third, grab the after school reset guide in the show notes. It gives you a simple reset routine for the after school handoff, plus scripts you can borrow when your child is overwhelmed, refusing, melting down, or heading straight into homework drama. The guide walks you through why after school feels hard, what not to do first, how to build your own reset plan, and how to know it's working without expecting perfection. It's linked in the show notes. And if this episode made you think, woo, we need a better after school landing pad, come find me on Instagram. We're building a community there. where we feel less alone and you're part of the team. Let's bring this back to the worksheet, the pencil, and the kid who says, I can't. So if your child is staring at that worksheet, sliding off the chair, losing the pencil that is somehow already in their hand, or saying, I can't, before the first problem starts, I want you to remember this. Capable does not always mean independently capable under stress. Your child may not be lazy or careless. They may be depleted, embarrassed, stuck at the starting line, or missing one small support that helps get their brain moving. This doesn't mean that the homework disappears, the backpack stays a paper swamp forever, or responsibility gets tossed out the window. It means we stop treating every stuck moment like a character problem. We find the break point, lower the shame, support the skill, and keep the expectation, and practice one tiny rep at a time. Maybe that rep is a snack before homework. Maybe it's one calmer sentence. Maybe it's opening the folder and circling number 1. Small steps, chosen on purpose, can change the whole feeling of home. And the next time you sit at that tiny round table in that tiny chair, remember, schools have expertise, and you are the expert on your child. Your insight is not extra, it's essential. You're not behind, you're building a partnership, and you're building skills, yours and theirs. One small, doable step at a time. Until next time, my friends. Thank you for hanging out with me on Psych to Parent. I'm Dr. Amy, your not-so-typical school psychologist, and I'm genuinely glad you're here doing this work instead of quietly white-knuckling it and blaming yourself. Your tiny win from today's episode is simple. Do not overhaul your entire parenting style. Pick one idea, one sentence, or one tiny shift and try it in a low-stakes moment this week. Then notice what changes, even if it is just by 1%. If you want more support, head over to psychtoparent.com. You'll find show notes, simple scripts, and parent-friendly guides that go with these episodes. While you're there, make sure you join the Tiny Wins mailing list so you get weekly brain-based tips, real-life examples from my work with families, and first dibs on new workshops and resources. It's the easiest way for us to stay connected beyond the podcast. If this podcast was helpful, it really does matter when you tap follow or subscribe. Leave a quick review or text it to a friend who is parenting a big-feeling, big-hearted kid too. This podcast is for education and encouragement. It is not therapy, and it's not a substitute for individualized care. If you're worried about your child or yourself, please reach out to a trusted professional in your area. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are building something new, one tiny win at a time. I'll see you in the next episode, probably with a cold coffee in hand, cheering you on.